Arriving in the Scottish Highlands, November 22, we had a few problems, but otherwise it was enjoyable. A long journey wouldn't be complete without the occasional coffee break. We had several coffee breaks. Eventually, in early evening, we arrived at T-Bay and took advantage of their excellent hotel. We also took advantage of looking around their shop. Now, the T-Bay Farm shop is pretty well known. It's featured in a recent BBC series, and you see all sorts of goodies here. Not the sort of thing you'd see in your average supermarket. There's fresh meat, there's cakes, there's all sorts of spices and kits for making your own pastries and curries, lots of tins food, lots of preserves, etc. And they've also got a stock of gifts, and of course this time of year there's a few Christmas gifts around as well. Next morning it was time to sample breakfast in their excellent restaurant, and a very lovely view outside across the countryside with a stream and a little waterfall. Although I did realise that it was artificial, because at 10 o'clock last night it stopped because it was switched off. But there's nothing artificial about the breakfast. Very nice indeed. Full marks. Now we had the last 250 miles to drive. I should explain that my wife is not driving because she broke her arm several weeks ago. I don't drive quite as much now, but fortunately we had Justin and Linda with us, and Linda loves driving. We've got 50 miles to go and darkness has started to fall. We shall all be very glad when we see the sign saying Fort William.
Well, we've woken up to a very pleasant morning. There's quite a lot of blue sky about, as you can probably see. And, well, it's promising to be a fair day. Rather cold, though, I hasten to add. Yes, it's showing about 4 degrees at the moment outside. Rather chilly, so I shan't stay out too long. But if I walk along the patio here and just show you the shot outside the cottage here, I think you'll realise how attractive it is. Well, Sue, my wife, obviously thinks that there are other things attractive around here other than the scenery. But nevertheless, let's now have a look at the scenery.
We're looking out across Loch Linnhe, one of the deepest lochs in Scotland, and to my right is Fort William. And here's the view across Loch Linnhe from the patio outside our cottage. Great for ham radio.
Well, this is the beach that's just opposite my cottage. My cottage is about 200 foot away behind the camera, and I'll just swing around. There's some rising ground behind the camera, and of course over there you can see the hills there. They're around about, I think about 1,800 feet high. I think they call them hills in Scotland. They're not tall enough to be mountains. We would call them probably high hills. Us southerners. But anyway, the great thing about this is that this loch here, Loch Linnhe, is actually salt water. That means to say that it's got very good reflection properties for radio. And I've done many operations on this beach during the summer months when I've been up here. I've been up here for about 27, 28 years on and off because I've had this cottage for that long. And it's great for operation. It's not so great today because it's blooming chilly. It's at 3 degrees at the moment, which is why I've got the hat on and so forth and the the coat on. It's a bit too cold at the moment to operate from the beach here, at least for me. Perhaps when I was younger I might have done it, but yeah, I'm not so young now. But it's great for RF, and if you get the chance to get near the sea, get near the salt water, although this is a loch, it's actually open to the sea. If you go that way north, it takes you to Inverness. There's a loch up there that takes you all the way up to Inverness, and down there we go towards Oban, and then it's open to the sea. And at the moment the tide is fairly low, but it normally comes up to around about here, I think. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. If you can get onto the beach, or even near a beach, if you get, say, sort of 50 or 100 foot away from the sea, you'll get some very good results. Now, sadly, I'm going to have to say goodbye to this location, at least on a regular basis, because we decided to sell the cottage. The reason being that I live 550 miles away, that is driving from the cottage, and that's about 11 hours at an average speed of 50 miles an hour. On some of the motorways you can't even achieve that. You've got roadworks and so forth, and there's hold-ups for all sorts of reasons. So decided that an 11-hour journey plus stops is really not practical. And in fact, what I've done in recent times, I've stopped off halfway and stopped overnight. But anyway, time has come to say goodbye to this wonderful landscape, the Highlands of Scotland, Loch Linney, just outside Fort William. And it'll be sad, but on the other hand, it's practical. But of course, we are surrounded by sea. The great thing about being in the UK is we're in Ireland and we're surrounded by the sea. Now, I know some of you will be a long way from the sea because you're in the centre of the country. But nevertheless, if you get the opportunity to go to the sea, even if you stay in the car, if you find a car park that is right by the sea, you'll get tremendous improvement in signal. I would say you get something like about 10 dB improvement in performance of your antenna because you're parked near the sea. There's a car park just up the road from here where in the winter I would park up and operate, and I'm literally by the sea. I'm about 10 foot from the edge of the sea. But the great thing about it is if you get the opportunity to operate near salt water, particularly in the summer when you're on holiday, then take it. And as I say, even if it's a mobile setup, you'll still get this 10 dB boost in performance. That's a gain worth having. So anyway, that's enough of the salt water for today as far as I'm concerned, because it's jolly, jolly cold. Fortunately, there's not much wind, but it's still pretty chilly. Anyway, it's a great place to operate. If you come up to the Highlands of Scotland, you'll find plenty of salt water. But anywhere in the UK, you're usually in striking distance of salt water, and it's worth the effort. So take it.
Now, as idyllic as this location is, we're not immune from problems. And on the Tuesday morning, we got up and we found that water wasn't draining from the sinks. The toilets would flush, but the water wouldn't go down, and we had a complete blockage. Fortunately, within an hour, the emergency services appeared and solved our problem, and it was quite fascinating to watch the problem being solved. A high-definition camera identifies the problem, and a powerful jet of water clears the problem. My initial band of choice was 20 metres, and I was operating 10 watts with an IC705, and that was working extremely well, even with a whip. I had one of the diamond base-loaded whips on the side of the van, and it enabled me actually to do some plots using reverse beacon. And I'll put it up on the screen now, and you can see how the hills seem to work. Here on the map you can see the position of my cottage, and we've got quite steep rising ground to the east, which is actually to the right of the cottage. So the direction of that ground is slightly east of north. And of course on the other side, which is a distance of 3,000 feet, you've got the other hills, which are in a westerly direction. Now you can see quite clearly from this map how the steep ground to the east immediately behind me is acting as a reflector and giving me good signal strength into North America. I've carried out this experiment on a number of occasions, and I always get good signal reports from the USA, even running very low power. I wanted to take advantage of the excellent conditions on 10 metres, but unfortunately I'd left my 10 metre whip at home, so time to improvise.
I wanted to operate on 10 metres, but I didn't have a 10 metre whip. So I used a trick which I've used a number of times before, and that is to just use a quarter wave length of wire from a connector on the mag mount, which I'll show you up closely now. I'm hoping you can see this. I've just got a little connector there which goes onto the mag mount, and that enables me to operate on any band I like, 10 metres, 15 metres, 12 metres just with the length of wire. It's a very neat trick. Of course, it does depend upon you having something to attach it to. This really needs to be a bit tighter actually. Need to make it a bit tighter, but it gets you on a band quickly, and it's very easy to just pack away. And as you can see, it's quite nice operating position. Nice little operating desk here, transceiver, power meter, key, microphone if I need one, power supply under there. If I want to make a cup of coffee, I can make a cup of coffee. And if it gets cold, close the door, turn the heating on. So it's quite a nice little portable station. And just below the operating table is my Jackery power supply, which will run the IC705 for quite a few hours. I think it's got a capacity of about 16.5 amp hours, so I can operate the IC705 all day on 10 watts, which is very convenient. Unfortunately, when I was trying 10 metres today, band conditions were pretty poor. I managed a couple of European contacts, heard a couple of weak American stations, but the band really wasn't open. So that's the name of the game, isn't it? You win some, you lose some. And now it's just started to rain. But we are in Scotland after all. There's always another day, isn't there?
And what do you do if it's raining? Well, you go to the whisky distillery. This one is Ben Nevis Distillery. And if your wife doesn't like whisky, will you buy her a cup of tea? It's that simple. By the way, you may have noticed the little VSWR meter I was using. It's the AVAIR AV20. It's got a full scale deflection of 0 to 30 or 0 to 300 watts. Covers 160 meters to 2 meters. Cross needle, so it makes it very easy to read power and VSWR at the same time.
Well, there we are. That was my trip to Scotland. Got back a few days ago. It's rather a long trip. We had lots of rain, lots of wind, and lots of traffic as we got to the southern part of England on the southern part of the M1 and the M25. But it was enjoyable, and despite the fact that we had a few problems, like me forgetting my 10 metre whip and having to get the old company out to unblock drains, it was enjoyable. And we had a bit of sunshine, we had a bit of rain. And if you're out and about in Scotland and it is raining really sort of heavily, then look for the nearest distillery, because it's quite enjoyable. And it warms the cockles of your heart, as they say. So, thank you for your support on this channel, much appreciated. Don't forget, if you want your ham radio gear, give our guys a call in Portsmouth. They're all licensed ham radio operators. They'll be happy to chat to you and talk over what you might be thinking about. Thank you for your support on this channel, greatly appreciated, and do thank you for your comments and suggestions and so forth. But in the meantime, you take care, enjoy your ham radio, and as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.